Facebook, this is Ask Grimala. We're in the Las Vegas Sun newsroom. This is Grimala. I'm Ray Brewer. We're talking everything UNLV athletics. Basketball's about to start, a few weeks away. Football suffered another tough loss. Listen, if you have a question for us, shoot it out on Facebook. We'll try to answer all your questions. We've got a list already pre-submitted. And Mike, everybody wants to know about the basketball team. Start talking UNLV. And when it comes to the Rebels, it's the McDonald's All-American, Brandon McCoy. Is he the real deal? Is he our guy? Is he going to get UNLV to the top of the league, back to the NCAA tournament?
Well, that is the main question for UNLV going into the season. He's obviously the star. He's the highest profile player. He's the guy that they built the entire recruiting class and the season around. He was the number one priority of the coaching staff for recruiting purposes. We haven't seen much of him. We've seen a little bit of him in practice. We saw a few minutes of scrimmaging at the Scarlet and Gray Showcase, which is their Midnight Madness type event. And we saw a little bit of him in the dunk contest. So, I mean, it's still a bit of a mystery. I mean, it's kind of strange. You're going into the season. It's, a couple weeks away, and we still don't know exactly what we're going to get from the team's best player. So in that sense, a lot is riding on how good he could be and how good he can be right away. Talked to Marvin Menzies at media day, and he seemed pretty confident. He said, he's going to play about it as much as he can. We're not going to no restrictions. We're going to see what he can do. We're going to put. They're not going to hold anything back with him, so they're going to give him a chance to be that role, to be the number one guy, to sort of be the centerpiece of the team. So I mean, if he's good, the team should be good.
Yeah. So the narrative, of course, with UNLV is Marvin Menzies, hired last year in the late spring, wasn't able to recruit. UNLV wins 11 games, finishes near the bottom of the Mountain West. Now with a full season to recruit, not only has he got, McCoy, he's got a few other pieces, and folks think that UNLV could potentially return to its winning ways, or at least have a winning record. And our first question using the hashtag #AskGrimala comes from Leo, and he says, Mike, with a great recruiting class slated this year and next, does Coach Menzies feel the pressure of having an instant winning program?
I mean, I think that he should. After last season, they set a program worst with only 11 wins last year. So yeah, they're in a competitive marketplace now. The Golden Knights are playing at the same time; those seasons overlap. So you're now competing for fans' attention. UNLV fans don't have the best reputation for sticking with a team through the peaks and valleys. They mostly just want to be there for the peaks. So, yeah, I mean, there's pressure to win, especially now that they've got a team that is capable of making noise and winning the conference. UNLV fans have been through, 4 or 5 years where the team consistently had high expectations and failed to meet them. Menzies did not have expectations last year, but now that he does, if the team underperforms again, I think you're going to see some of that same old Rebels attitude of thinking to the fans. We say this is the same thing. We've seen it before. We've seen this movie. So, from that sense, there is a pressure on them to have a good season and to contend, at least contend for something.
Yeah. So the stories with McCoy and Steven Zimmerman from 2 years ago are pretty similar, right? Big body in the post, ton of skill. McDonald's All-American, has basically said, I'm only going to be here 1 year. So Cameron Bugsby asks, Mike, who will have a better season, 2017 freshman McCoy or 2015 freshman Zimmerman?
Steven Zimmerman was the most hyped prospect, the most hyped recruit that UNLV has landed since the glory days of Jerry Tarkanian and Larry Johnson and those guys. And I mean, he didn't quite live up to that. He was a consistent double-double guy. He never shot a high percentage. He wasn't great offensively. But the big thing with Steven Zimmerman was the injuries. He only played basically half of a season. Nagging injuries throughout the year. He struggled to stay on the court. So if McCoy can at least stay healthy and give you that interior defense and give you some scoring and rebounding, and if he can stay healthy and play for a full season, the value will be higher than what they got from Steven Zimmerman.
But when you look at the lineup compared to last year, I mean, they have a viable starting lineup now, which they did not last year.
Yeah, Andrew Reyes, thanks, Andrew, for sending us a question. He wants to know, Mike, what are the realistic expectations? Obviously, repeating a losing overall record is unacceptable. It seems as the bar is pretty low if we're, meaning UNLV,
predicted to finish 6th in the conference. How high would we, meaning UNLV, need to finish in the conference to be considered for an at-large bid?
They're not going to be considered for an at-large bid. It can't happen. Just the schedule that they're playing, the non-conference schedule, and the fact that there aren't that many good teams in the Mountain West, they're not going to have enough good games and good wins available on the schedule to really make a case for an at-large berth. So I would take that off the table right now. If you're expecting that, you should probably reset your expectations just because the schedule is not going to support an at-large bid. They're going to have to win the Mountain West tournament to get in, and I think they're capable of doing that. I mean, they were picked in the middle of the Mountain West in the preseason poll, but I think a lot of that is just uncertainty. The media covering the league, they're not quite sure what to make of Brandon McCoy and Shakur Houston and Jordan Johnson and these guys because we've never seen them play before. Like, they haven't played at this level. So it's a question mark. I think the potential is much higher. I would have picked them second if I had a vote in the preseason poll. I think, Reno is probably the number one, the clear choice, and then I think UNLV is in that next level who should contend and push them for the league championship.
Yeah, we do have a question from Scott S. on Facebook. Scott, how you doing, brother? We appreciate you. He wants to know, how much can we, assuming UNLV, truly count on a freshman to produce this year? If they don't, do we have another down year? That's a great question, because if we put all our eggs in the Brandon McCoy basket, then he turns out to be a bust, or if he gets hurt, like Armani Rogers in football, what happens?
It's going to be tough to overcome. I mean, they've got a lot riding on Brandon McCoy. Like I said, he's the guy. Defensively, Marvin Menzies wants to play a style that he wants to own the paint. He wants to out-rebound teams. He wants to just outsize you in the paint. He wants to have multiple big men that he can rotate in, and McCoy is the linchpin to all of that. McCoy, he played for the Team USA in the World Championships in the spring, in the early summer, and he looked good. He was one of the best players on that team. It was made up of all under 19. It was made up of high school seniors and college freshmen, and he was one of the best players on that team. I'm not worried about him so much busting. I mean, injuries are that can happen to anyone. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I think Menzies is a good big man coach. I think he'll know how to get the most out of McCoy, even if he struggles to adapt or if it takes him a while to adjust. They'll find the things that he does well. And throughout the season, they'll start playing to those strengths, sort of like we saw with Joe Van Mooring and some guys last year, a team that wasn't talented, but they were able to at least find the players who did have some skills and develop them as the year went along into useful players. So I think McCoy, he's got a high ceiling and a pretty high floor. He's not going to be, you don't have to worry about him being a complete bust.
Yeah, and I think we've also learned a little bit about Marvin Menzies, the recruiter. Last night he landed another notable prospect in Bryce Hamilton, who had Power 5 conference options. He's a consensus top 100 player, and he's a guy, more important, who I think could be here for 4 years that they could develop. A little bit about Bryce. What is he going to bring to the table? And what have we learned, Mike, about Marvin Menzies, the recruiter? And this comes from Caleb Smith. Thank you.
Well, if you take a look at the UNLV's the coaching staff, they're recruiting the last 2 years. The number one target in 2017 class was Brandon McCoy, and they got him. Their number one target in 2018 was Bryce Hamilton, and they got him early. They've got him before his senior season started. So they've got their top two guys from the last two classes. That's a great sign going forward. Bryce Hamilton, he's a productive scorer. He's a 6'4" shooting guard. He's a lefty. He's a guy who can score. He can shoot the three, but he can also drive inside. He's not a super athlete. He's not going to be, above the rim throwing down, super crazy dunks, but he can get up there and he can finish. He'll attempt a lot of free throws. He throws his body around. He's got to work on tightening his dribble a little bit, but he's a guy who's going to come in and eventually probably be a guy that you can focus your offense around, and he can score from all three levels. So you put him, and he's also a guy who projects as like a 4-year player, which is important for a program to rebuild the stability. They've got Bryce Hamilton locked in now for, it looks like, 4 years. They've got Trey Woodbury in the same class, who's another guard who will be here for 4 years. Amori Hardy's a freshman this year. He looks like another promising 4-year player. So you look at the backcourt rotation. They look like they've got something that they can really build on for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and another great question from Don Buttle, Mike. Will the Golden Knights, our hockey team that's off to this phenomenal 6-1 start, first year being in the NHL, Will their success hurt UNLV basketball attendance? Meaning, on those few days when there's a game for both hockey and basketball, will they lose out, or will the sports fan who has X amount of dollars to spend save up to go to a Golden Knights game?
Well, that's tough to say. It's Golden Knights. It doesn't feel like, they're off to a 6-1 start, which no one could have expected. It's the inaugural season. The excitement is high. Like, people are keyed up on the Golden Knights, and they've got this brilliant start. But I still don't feel like, I don't feel like Golden Knights fever is taking over. I feel like there's plenty of room for UNLV to get in there and work with their own fan base. If UNLV wins, they'll be fine. I don't think they have to worry about the NHL sweeping them away or sweeping them off the landscape or burying them in terms of the marketplace, because I feel like this is about as good as it could get for the Golden Knights, and I feel like if UNLV has a good team this year, they'll be fine. So that's not something I would be worried about, as long as you can put a winning product on the court.
And the thing for me with UNLV basketball this year is you look at the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't many dates like there were last year. Like, you knew you weren't going to beat Duke. You knew you were going to lose to Kansas. You knew you were going to lose to Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm.
This year, there's only really 2 of those marquee games. You got Arizona at your place. And for me, I think they're going to be able to win some games and create some positive energy to where they get to league play. If everything goes right, they may have double-digit wins and a chance in a league that really – outside of, I guess, UNR, and I hate to say this, and Rebel Nation, please forgive me, because as everybody knows, I hate Reno,
Reno
more than anybody in the world. But if, say, Reno is as good as we think they could be, or as good as everybody else says they were, I think UNLV is right there in the mix with everybody else. And if there's some positive energy going.
Yeah, I think that's part of why Menzies put together the schedule the way he did. I think they just want to win back fans' confidence. And I think if you can, you may play the first 7 games maybe against cupcakes and teams that you can clobber, but I think for casual fans who maybe left the team last year and stopped paying attention, if you pick up the paper, you look and you see that UNLV, hey, they're 6-0, hey, they're 7-0, maybe Menzies has got this thing back on track, then you're sort of drawn back into, you're more interested in the team and you can sort of get back into it. So I think they sort of scheduled it carefully that way. So yeah, not as many marquee games, but I think they do want to bring back some of those fans that may have jumped ship last year when they were 11-20 and they weren't drawing many people and they weren't an exciting team and they weren't a winning team. I feel like they can be that this year and give the fans something to watch, and fans like to see wins.
Yeah, for me, if they could win the games they're supposed to, which there's plenty of chances, you get to that Arizona game in early December, right? It's got to be built up to an event. Ton of marketing, get people to the MAC, get people in the upper deck, get 14,000, 15,000 people there, and then put on a show. Mm-hmm. Compete with Arizona, basket for basket. Have some, as much as this doesn't matter, but have some attacks to the rim, have some dunks, have some good performances. And now all of a sudden I think people are like, okay, Menzies has got this thing going.
Yeah, a marquee win would be great for Marvin Menzies at this point, but I think just getting the team back in the habit of winning games. A 20-win season would go a long way right now. When you look back at it, it won't matter who that 18 of the 20 wins were against. Nobody teams and teams that they were hugely favored against. It's just going to be, hey, UNLV's back, and that's what they need more than anything.
Yeah. Shifting gears to UNLV football, the Rebels stuck on 2 wins. Lost on Saturday to Utah State. They were up 28-7. And then gave up 40, my math's not that good, 5 points, give or take, to close the game. The week prior, they were up big at Air Force, gave up a bunch of points to end up losing that game, and the losses are mounting up. The yards they're surrendering on defense are mounting up. The first question comes from Jeff Martin and everybody else, and he wants to know, how's Armani Rogers? He left the game against Utah State, and UNLV was awful after he left the quarterback.
Yeah, he went into a concussion protocol. He took a helmet-to-helmet hit that dazed him and knocked him out of the game. We don't know his exact status right now. Tony Sanchez said he would be in the concussion protocol. He didn't rule him out for this immediately after in his post-game presser. He didn't rule him out for any period of time. And then UNLV released their depth chart for this week's Fresno State game. They released that depth chart yesterday, and Armani Rogers was listed as a co-starter. They didn't. They listed Armani Rogers, Kurt Palandek, and Johnny Stanton as 3 co-starters. So whatever that means, I don't know what that. To me, I guess that means Armani Rogers is still in the mix, and they're going to see how it goes this week. And they're hopeful that he plays. We'll know more. Tony Sanchez has a press conference this afternoon. And I'm sure he'll go into that a little more detail and let us know, the status of Rogers and what it's going to take for him to get back on the field. But as of now, I mean, it sounds like they're hopeful that he may be able to play in that game.
Yeah, Brian Carter on Facebook, and he also sent us a few questions on Twitter, Ask Grimala. But Brian Carter wants to know, like many other UNLV fans, Tony Sanchez, another losing season, his 3rd season as coach. Does he have to beat Reno Thanksgiving weekend in the Fremont Cannon game to get year 4?
Well, Tony Sanchez, he signed in a contract extension in the offseason, which I don't think people factor in enough. He's literally 7 games into his contract extension, so he's under contract through 2020. So he's got this year, and then he's got 3 more seasons on his deal. That's a lot of time to, that was something that the previous administration got criticized for a lot. They'd sign a coach to an extension, and then they'd fire him before the extension even kicked in. That's what they did with Bobby Hawk. That's what they did with Dave Rice. That's what they did with Tim Chambers. They extensions and then fire. I don't know if you want to continue that cycle. I mean, you've got to give him a little bit more time. The offense has been good under Tony Sanchez, probably better than you could have expected when he was hired. The defense is still really bad. They've been bad every year. They haven't made any progress. If you can find a way to make progress on one side of the ball, that would be that would be enough to justify keeping him around. But I don't think Tony Sanchez has anything to worry about this year, probably not even next year.
I don't think so either. I mean, obviously, the fans who follow our coverage know I have a high opinion of Tony, and there's no masking that. But if you see kind of behind the scenes some of the things that he's done to get UNLV to the next millennium, if you will, everything from fundraising and get kids on campus early for summer school, which is huge. I mean, before they were showing up August 1st, not in shape, not willing to lift, basically wasting a year. The nutrition program, and then of course he fundraised to bring in $12 or $13 million for this football complex that they got the loan for to get built. And so the infrastructure is in place. It's just not translating on the field. And what's not translating is they just don't have solid backups. Like Rogers goes down, Palandek's a disaster.
Well, if you look at the depth on defense, they suffered an injury at outside linebacker against Utah State, and then Johnny Stanton all of a sudden is playing outside linebacker. He's a quarterback, and he's now your outside linebacker for playing the entire second half. So depth is a huge issue. And like you said, Tony Sanchez, if anything is going to protect him for the foreseeable future, it's the fact that he did raise all that money for the practice facility that they're building, and that was always what he said. Let's build this facility. Let's use it to recruit. Let's bring in some high caliber players. Let's get a bigger, faster, stronger team. You've kind of got to let him see that now that they've raised the money, and you've let him raise the money and then go and speak for the loan and loan approval and all that stuff. Don't you kind of have to let him see it through at least and give him some time to use that and recruit and build it and see what happens?
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you look historically at UNLV, it's not like they've ever knocked the socks off it and won. So why not give a guy who's got a plan that we see some results of the plan in place, just not on the field, follow through? Now, many people have asked this question, so I don't want to single out the one person, but Lewis Gregory, for example, LewDog777 on Twitter. I love that handle. But he wants to know about the offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. Will there be any change? I could speak for the offensive coordinator. Arnie Cotton obviously is doing a great job. They're top 15 nationally in rushing all 3 years. The offensive line, I think, is great. Rogers is a franchise quarterback. You don't want to bring anybody in to change the message. Defensively, though...
Well, defensively, they haven't made any progress at all. They've been in the bottom, 10, 20 in total defense, all 3 years. It seems to have gotten worse, if anything, this year. the offense has staked them out to leads in the last 2 weeks, and the defense has given up 27 unanswered points, 38 unanswered points, just these huge runs, and they'll give up touchdowns 4 out of 5 possessions, or 4 possessions in a row they're allowing touchdowns. So the defense, if you're going to address one side of the ball, if Tony Sanchez has to go in the offseason and Desiree Reed-Francois, the athletic director, says, hey, what's going on? What are we doing to get better? It may be an instance where Tony Sanchez has to say, like, hey, we've got to make some changes. We've got to try to get, but that side of the ball it's killing them. It's dragging down the entire team, and they're not getting better. That's the problem. On offense, they have. I mean, it's not perfect. Their second half offense has gone in the tank the last few weeks. They can't score in the second half after opponents adjust to their initial game plan. The passing game has not been as good as we thought it might be with Rodgers at quarterback now. But at least the offense, there's something they can hang their hat on. They're good at running the ball. They're recruiting players. They've got playmakers. It's at least working on some level. Whereas defense, it's not working at any level.
And you bring up recruiting. Obviously, Tony Sanchez knows. Everybody knows they've got to get better players on defense. The defensive line has been an area of concern. I mean, there's no chance they do anything in the run game. They're not pressuring the quarterback when he drops back to pass. So they're going to have to recruit a higher caliber of player. But the Rebels this weekend at Fresno State, one of the surprises of the league now, 4-2 record, went and limited San Diego State, the reigning league champion, to 3 points. And now UNLV, a game we all thought at the beginning of the year would be a coin flip, especially considering UNLV's already beat them twice. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like it could be another loss on Saturday, which means people are going to get more restless. Your thoughts on the Fresno game? What is UNLV going to have to do? Obviously, they're going to have to play some better defense.
Yeah, the first question you got to answer is Rodgers. Like, if he can play, that changes everything because he can do some of the things you want to do at quarterback. If it's Palandek, if it's Stanton, those guys are limited. So the first thing you have to see is what's happening with Armani Rodgers defensively. They've got to figure something out. They've tried a few different things. Early in the season they were a conservative defense. They were playing it safe. In the last few weeks they've ramped up the pressure. They've tried blitzing more. They've tried sending extra rushers and being an aggressive team, and that hasn't worked. They've gotten burned by big plays. They've got miscommunication in the defensive backfield. They don't have the athletes to create pressure on the defensive line. I'm not sure what the answers are, but they've got to do something. At this point in the season, they still have no idea how they want to play defensively, and that's maybe the most concerning thing.
Yeah, it's an awful spot going into Fresno, a team that's hot. Likely won't have your quarterback. We've got time for a few more questions on Ask Grimala, starting with Scott Shepman on Facebook, who says, Mike, do these good recruiting classes Sanchez has bringing in has anyone on defense worth getting excited about? So is there anybody who's coming into the program who could plug and play?
Well, that's the thing. If you look at their defensive roster, it would be one thing if they had young players that they could point to as, give this kid another year and he'll be a good player, or if they had, a next wave coming up. But I don't really see that right now. I see Farrell Hester is a freshman that they're feeding minutes to at middle linebacker. You can tell that they want him to win that job and take over and be a key piece of the defense going forward, but he's not quite ready yet, but they want him to be. Jericho Flowers is a sophomore cornerback. I think he can be a good player. He's made some nice plays this year. But, there just isn't a wave of young talent that you can say, yeah, we're bad on defense now. But give it a couple of years, and once these guys are starters and they're bigger and stronger, we can turn it around. I don't see that wave coming up, so I'm not sure what they can do about that in the future recruiting classes. But for right now, I haven't seen the results in terms of on the defensive side of the ball anyways.
Yeah. Last question from our guy, Dougie Sinclair. And I love this question. That's why I saved it for last. He says, whose decision was it to make the horrific logo and create those ugly basketball uniforms? Now, did you hate those basketball uniforms?
They're pretty bad.
Are they?
Yeah. I don't care about uniforms. It's but they don't look that great.
Okay.
They look like track and field uniforms that you would see like someone running the 100 meters.
They look like Utah's uniforms that say running Utes, except ours say running Rebels.
Yeah. Is that a good thing?
Well, I'm just saying that's what they look like. I didn't think they were that ugly. Like in comparison to the logo I couldn't figure out. I was embarrassed. There's no way. I mean, you can't even find the logo. Like if you go to like Fanatics at the mall or whatever, you can't find the logo anywhere.
Well, the jerseys are probably a step up from the logo, but that doesn't mean that they're good. It just means that they're not the worst.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean,
in terms of the question, finding out like who is responsible for it, that you may never find the true way because no one wants to. Success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. Like no one is going to.
Was it the guy at Nike or was Marvin Menzies there with a red colored pencil making the things? I think that's what people want to know.
I think usually when a design comes out that poorly, it's usually a committee. It's usually passed through a bunch of different hands, and everyone's sort of had their say and put in their notes and their ideas. And what you get is, something that doesn't work on any level.
Yeah.
It doesn't make anyone happy.
Yeah. Well, this is the Rebel Room. For Mike, I'm Ray. We'll be back in a few months, probably before the end of the year. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.